Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of my one-shot series. It's basically videos that are less planned, me just kind of like reacting to something. There might be some videos put in afterwards, but today I wanted to talk about podcasters, massive podcasters, suddenly caring about Palestine and Gaza and speaking up for it, and basically kind of how I feel about it and how many people are feeling about it. And I'm kind of I'm not going to be a centrist on it. I do generally think these podcasters have a bad influence. There's a small silver lining that a lot of people who maybe would never hear certain things about Palestine hear stuff, but obviously these people do prop up a status quo that is fundamentally like pro-Israel. And today I'm talking about Theo Von and Joe Rogan, because Theo Von put out this video recently where he speaks about what's happening in Gaza, and he's obviously platformed like a few people who spoke about it as well, but he's also platform Donald Trump, went to Donald Trump's inauguration, platform JD Vance, had Mark Zuckerberg on recently, and then Joe Rogan has had all these terrible people on, loads and loads of pro-Israel voices, loads and loads of pro-conservative voices. These people obviously have material interests in people like Donald Trump being president in the first place. So a lot of people you know, why should we even listen to you cry what they say is crocodile tears? You suddenly care about this after platforming all these terrible people who have supported this and facilitate it. People like Mark Zuckerberg, what he does with Meta is suppress pro-Palestinian speech, right? So how can you claim that you care about this and then you've got him on the next day? So I want to talk about all of this today, just because we're talking about Palestine stuff. Thank you so much to everyone who donated to my girlfriend's fundraiser for medical aid for Palestinians. She completed the half marathon. It was a great event. We raised a lot of money, and the fundraiser is still open this week. So if you want to check it out and maybe donate, we raised over £5,000, which is absolutely amazing considering, I only posted it on this channel for about a month. So thank you to everyone who donated to that and everyone who donated to my fundraiser. We raised about $25,000 between the two fundraisers, so that's absolutely amazing. Obviously, the situation is very, very bleak, but again, it's good we can come together as like a small little YouTube community and raise this amount of money that is going to make some sort of difference to someone's life. So thought I'd just shout that out before going further into this video. So yeah, I want to talk about these podcast bros. So how do I feel about these people generally before we get into the Gaza comments? So I hate both of them. But I do also recognize that a lot of average people, especially Americans, will watch these people and not really understand maybe the political ramifications and maybe might just have bizarre politics, like co-worker politics. I'd say it more for Theo Von because I feel like he is less down the politics rabbit hole in terms of his guest list. Like every time I go see who Joe Rogan's had on, it's like a rotating guest of like former intellectual dark web grifters, but it's just like so far right. Obviously Hassan has been on Theo Von. I think Bernie Sanders has been on recently. Gabor Mate on as well, who obviously is a Jewish anti-Zionist. So he hasn't been like terrible in his guest list, but like I said with both of them, their guests do increasingly lean very, very conservative. And these people, obviously Joe Rogan endorsed Trump. I'm not sure if Theo Von did, but he had him on softball interviews from both of them. And when I look at their podcast lineups, amongst like the Timothy Chalamets and like random actors, it's like the world's supervillains are all on these podcasts, and they go on these podcasts to basically launder their reputation and make them like more palatable to just general Americans, right? They know loads and loads of people, especially right-wing men, love these podcasts and they want to get on them. And when you have all that context of how many Zionists versus anti-Zionists have these people had on, when they start, saying stuff about Gaza, which is welcome, you can understand why people actually get really mad. So Theo Von posted this on his social media feeds the other day, and I want to show you it, and I want to give my take on it before we get into like a bit more reaction to this stuff.
I wanted to say something. There's been something that's just been kind of on my heart, and so I feel like I should bring it up. There is, we've had people on the podcast in the past to talk about it, and there's a conflict that's been happening in the Middle East. People know about it, between Israel and Palestine and some of the areas over there, the Gaza area they talk about. And And I just think it feels to me, I don't know if it feels to me like it's a genocide that's happening while we're alive here in front of our lives. And I don't, sometimes I feel like I should say something. I'm not a geologist or geographer or anything like that, so I don't know a lot of some of it I do know though. Like I know the basics of the issues over there, but for me, it's just like how I feel like you see all these photos of people, just children, women, people, body parts, just people like putting their kids back together. And I just can't believe that we're watching that and that more isn't said about it. And so I'm not saying anyone else needs to say anything, but I think I'm just that more isn't said about it by me. So I just, I want to be able to speak up about that I think we're watching probably like, one of the sickest things that's ever happened. And I'm sorry if I've kind of haven't said about it. I've tried to talk about it and learn about it. But I don't know. Maybe I just wanted to say something. I don't even know what to do. And it's crazy because our country's also complicit in it. It's in it and has been for a long time. And it's just kind of interesting because then you just realize, oh, well, I'm a member of this country, but I'm just, what we want sometimes doesn't matter, and you just have to be a member of a place and your government is making other choices. So I don't know if I said that correctly, or I don't even know exactly what I said, but I just have, it's just like been making me really sick. And I feel like I just needed to say something that I think you don't have to think that. I'm not asking you to do anything. But I just have to say that so I'm not sitting by, there's that piece inside of me like, why can't you say something? There's people that can't even speak and you can say something, and so that's how I just had to just speak up. Anyway, yeah. So just praying for those people and just the grief that is all going to cause.
So before we get into like my take on the bad side and what people have been saying about this, so what he said there, really sadly, in the American context of celebrity, that is like a brave thing for someone to say, like what he said right there. And it's also like a very normal reaction from like an everyday person to see what's happening, especially if you're on Twitter enough, see all these gruesome images, disgusting images, and you're just watching it and the whole world is acting like, yeah, that's fine and normal. And we all know that there's plenty of times where the world hasn't acted like that, whether it comes to like Rwanda or Bosnia and stuff like that. But when it's actually something even worse, and we're live streaming it in 4K to every single phone in the Western world, we're all just meant to be gaslit by the media and our governments that no, Israel should be allowed to do this. We'll keep sending it weapons and we'll keep actually targeting pro-Palestinian voices and just trying to destroy their lives. We're going to go after groups like Kneecap, but if you want to, praise the new Syrian president, that's cool. If you want to praise Israel, that's cool. You can serve in the IDF and you can go over there, serve in the IDF, come back. Nothing will happen to you. That's also fine, right? So that's kind of the heart of what he's getting at. Like, you're seeing all this stuff and it feels like, we're watching something absolutely terrible. And why this is a good thing is because loads of conservatives don't even hear shit like this, right? So loads of conservative people are going to watch this guy, obviously, went to Trump's inauguration, has this conservative audience. They're going to hear someone saying that in plain English, and maybe it will break through their little bubble, potentially, on this one issue. And on this one issue, I think it's fair to say that we need as many voices as possible, regardless of political affiliation, because the way they often divide people on this issue is they poke holes into, all right, so you're left wing, right? Gays for Gaza, that doesn't make sense, because why don't you try going to Gaza if you're gay and see how they treat you? Because maybe a country that is run by an Islamist organization, they might be more conservative on things like LGBT rights, right? So that's how they try and divide us. So on this one issue, I'm not going to say to someone like him who's more conservative than me, nah, you can't speak out about this because you're conservative. Like, I want everyone to speak out about this. And recently a conservative politician said in the UK that I've always supported Israel and I regret it and I was wrong, right? That's important for people to hear because especially on the conservative side, it's such a uniform opinion in many different countries around total support for Israel. And we see that in the UK. I mean, in the US, it's a little different because there's a lot of anti-Semites in the conservative movement who only oppose Israel because it's Jewish, not because it's doing terrible things and like exterminating a whole culture. But also there are, I guess, people who genuinely just think this is sick. And I guess this might galvanize those people more. But again, it's important to hear this. Now, I'll get into the criticism of Theo Von specifically. Obviously, I've already said all this stuff about all the guests he's had on, right? Conservative, supervillains, people who've been very complicit, like Mark Zuckerberg, in censoring pro-Palestinian voices and attacking them, people who do support the state of Israel, have massive business ties with the state of Israel. The only thing I can say in his defense is he seems like an idiot, right? Because Theo Von had dinner with Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner this month. Beyond the point that that is Donald Trump's daughter and son-in-law who both served in the first Trump administration, which, you know, Jared Kushner helped run his Israel policy, which resulted in an Israeli settlement in Syria being named after Donald Trump himself. Jared Kushner is the guy who is talking about how valuable beachfront property is going to be for people who invest, right? Like himself. So this is one of the supervillains who was behind the scenes helping orchestrate American support for Israel. And you're sitting across from him during what you said is like this terrible crime against humanity, and you're having a friendly dinner with him and his wife, right? So this, yeah, like I said, the only defense is you're an idiot and you don't understand anything. And it comes across in that little clip. He's speaking from the heart and trying to do the right thing. But then it's just like, you're hanging out with the supervillains doing this. So how can people completely take that seriously? And that's why I guess for a lot of people it rings hollow. I think overall, like, of course, yeah, it's a good thing if more people are saying this. That's what I will say. But I totally get people being like, well, if you care that much, what the fuck is this? This is like a week ago you did this. And then, like I said, you are complicit in getting Donald Trump in, who everyone knows was pro-Israel. So now let's move on to, in a similar capacity, I think it's actually worse, Joe Rogan. So he has recently been talking more about, I wouldn't call him pro-Palestine, but he obviously had that Douglas Murray, Dave Smith debate on his show about it. One Jewish libertarian talking with, don't even know what you call him, just like some sort of conservative Zionist extremist. And he took Dave Smith's side more about it, right? And that was a more anti-Israel position. Now Joe Rogan has also been sort of questioning stuff to do with Gaza a bit more. Now I can't play you this clip because every time, like I said before, I play a Joe Rogan clip, it gets claimed. But he had a clip basically saying that Israel are clearly targeting civilians and you can't just say it's okay when we do it because your people went through something terrible as well during the Second World War, right? So he's saying stuff like that, which again, it's welcome when you have these big podcast hosts saying these things that, you know, might open people's eyes up to Palestine. But is it also another factor I'm thinking about now? Is it too little, too late? Like Joe Rogan is even worse because when I go on his podcast lineup, it's far worse than Theo Von. His lineup is more diverse than Joe Rogan, and there is more anti-Zionist voices. So if I go on Joe Rogan and I look at like the recent political people he's had on, Jordan Peterson, who basically had a go at Joe Rogan for even platforming the debate and saying it's like the woke right who are anti-Israel. Obviously, he's had Konstantin Kizin on as well recently, who is a massive pro-Israel supporter. He had Elon Musk in at the end of February, Brett Weinstein, Gad Saad, Lex Fridman, Mark Zuckerberg. So it's just like, Joe Rogan, you can say all these things, right? But the ecosystem you've cultivated online with this massive podcast, like the biggest podcast, firmly puts people in a pro-Israel position, right? So I don't think necessarily people like him deserve credit because it's like, well, if you actually felt this way, why do you keep inviting the most unhinged people who have supported Israel throughout all of their crimes onto your podcast? And in Joe Rogan's case, you don't get real other voices. Like Dave Smith is the best you've done recently. But who else has come on to give you the pro-Palestinian position and expose your audience more to this? Like, yes, I do think it's better that they say this stuff, but at the same time, the ecosystems they're cultivating don't make people more likely to support Palestine than Israel. They make people more likely to support Israel and support the status quo which has resulted in this happening in the first place, right? So I totally understand people thinking that these podcast bros are crying crocodile tears, because here's the main thing, right, as well. We are now seeing for the first time even the UK government have strong language for Netanyahu, because it's gotten so bad, not because they've suddenly grown a spine and they've suddenly grown principles, because they haven't. I saw recently there was another British RAF flight taken off from Cyprus to help Israel, right? It's none of that stuff. It's that in terms of the PR, Israel is becoming a pariah state, right? It cannot hide anymore, and it relies on this conservative backing in America to make sure it can continue carrying out these crimes, right? So the UK, in like countries like France, they're trying to cover their asses now. And you could totally look at that in terms of the podcast bros, where you've had these people on who have pushed the whole narrative in a certain direction, but now even the governments of the UK can't ignore how bad it's getting and pretend it's not getting this bad anymore. So maybe you're trying to cover your ass, like, yeah, I might have had like Mark Zuckerberg on, I might have had dinner with Jared Kushner recently, even though he wants to colonize Gaza with all his business developments. I might have had all these terrible people on, I might have supported Donald Trump, might have had Donald Trump on, might have had JD Vance on, Elon Musk on, Mark Zuckerberg on, but I actually do care about this. I can totally understand how people are very cynical about it. And I sympathize with that as well. Like, do we really want to hear this now? Why couldn't you say this like 1.5 years ago or something? But again, the main point is, at the very least, it's better people are saying this. And on the conservative side, it's better famous conservatives are saying this, because you need everyone to open their eyes and make sure the support of Israel becomes a politically untenable position for any political party. And the status quo of maybe the United States or the UK is you don't support them, right? I guess any shift in that direction is a good thing. So that is it for the video. Let me know what you guys think, and if you made it this far, thank you for watching.